Those four things to me are standard that everybody needs to ace in their first 30 days. And if you don't ace these things, you don't advance past go. You don't collect $200 to me. I'm not putting somebody on the phone talking to live prospects and risking brand reputation unless somebody has nailed those four things.
Hello, once again, this is The Gap by GTM Buddy. Really excited to be here. I am Jonathan Carford, your host, also known as Coach K. I am really excited to talk to you about the guest today. Probably someone that most of you have already heard of, or at least have seen his stuff online. His name is Scott. He'll dive into more about him in a bit, but you'll see from his LinkedIn that he's been or has been a LinkedIn, or I shouldn't say LinkedIn, is a strategic advisor to 20 plus companies and has helped with a lot of different places. He's also been a VP of sales and a CRO in the past to several startups who've gone IPO. And he is currently the CEO of Scott Leese Consulting, as well as the Surf and Sales. He has a Surf and Sales podcast, which he also runs, and he has his event coming up, which I'm really excited to help talk to you guys about that. And we also, in today's episode, we really dive into where he sees things going and where enablement, or at least where leaders should be thinking about where enablement can fit in to find success, because he's just done it from a point of view as a consultant and seeing some of the gaps that people have as a consultant walking in and helping sales leaders really get to the next level. Really excited for it. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone. It is I, Coach K, once again, and I have the absolute pleasure to chase down the man, Scott Leese, with me. How are you, my friend?
Great. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I've been excited. I've been following you for a while. A big fan of what you do and how you talk about. You're definitely an out-of-the-box thinker. And to introduce you, if people don't know who you are, I don't know who you would if you don't know. But if you don't know, you're obviously the CEO and founder of Scott Leese Consulting. You are running currently the Surf and Sales podcast and the summit, which, by the way, I'll talk about that more in a second. And then you're a well-known advisor for several different companies. You've talked about how many people you've worked with in the past, but you're a voice for both, I don't know if I'd say the new way of selling, probably a better way of selling, and as well as a better way of enablement. And I had to have you on as a guest around the gap and talk about what we're talking about today. So I would love, before we dive in, obviously anyone can go to your LinkedIn and see all your experiences, but I'd love to hear the non-LinkedIn version of Scott Leese and how you got to where you are now and what you're passionate about.
The funny thing is there is no LinkedIn version of Scott versus an off LinkedIn version of Scott. There's only Scott. So
Yeah.
I spent, the better part of 20 years building and scaling sales teams for startups, primarily tech, SaaS, but the first half of my career in the San Francisco Bay Area, the second half in Austin, Texas. I was the head of sales, VP of sales, whatever you want to call it, 6 times. I'd consider 5 of those times to be successful. 3 of them had really solid exits. 1 of them is still ongoing, kind of unicorn situation. And then, about 5 years ago, 5 years in October, I went full time and running my own consulting shop, doing strategic advisory work, sales consulting, fractional VP of sales work, fractional RevOps work as well now for startups all around the world. Yeah, I've worked with people, I think every continent except for Africa, and something like 100 clients in the last 5 years, 12 of whom are unicorns and 11 have had exits at this point in time. So yeah, pretty decent track record. I wrote a couple sales books back in the day, started Surf and Sales in 2007. Yeah, that's about it.
I love when people have this massive and crazy respected career in 5 minutes or less. It's crazy. But to be fair to you, you've done a lot of stuff and impacted a lot of people, which obviously you're humble and downplaying a little bit. But I can tell you this is the first time you and I have had the pleasure of meeting, and you've impacted me, and we've never talked before except for on LinkedIn. So I know you're impacting a lot of people, which I appreciate. Random question, not about sales, but surfing. I've got to know the surfing story because I've surfed 4 times in my life, successfully once. Tell me the surfing story.
Yeah, I was like having a beer in 2004 with a couple of friends that were on the sales team with me. And randomly, I was like, we should go learn how to surf. And I didn't grow up surfing. I grew up in Chico, California, which is like the middle of the valley in Northern California where all the fires are all the time and stuff like that. I went to college in San Francisco, but I never even surfed in college. I was busy playing tennis and soccer. I played 2 sports in college for 4 years. And then I had this life-changing experience where I got extremely ill right before my 23rd birthday. And I spent 4 years in the hospital fighting for my life. 9 surgeries, 4 major
Wow.
life-saving abdominal surgeries, got addicted to opioids while I was in the hospital, had to kick off with dope. So I started my career late at 27 years old. And as part of rebuilding my body and exercising again, I randomly had this idea that surfing would be a good thing to go figure out how to do. So my two friends and I, the idiots that we are, we went to a secondhand store, found like a crappy wetsuit, crappy surfboards, were not at all the right shape or size or anything, and just went to the one beach in Pacifica that we had
That
heard
could
was like
work.
the Lindemar is the name of it. It's like the one
Yeah.
beach that everybody goes to. We don't know what we're doing. We go to the far north end of the beach where there's nobody hanging out. There's a reason nobody hangs out down there. We didn't know that. We were just like, let's get away from everybody else. And to your point about trying to surf 4 times and figuring it out once, it took a while, man, to figure it out. But we kept at it, teaching ourselves. And at one point, I was probably surfing 4 or 5 times a week while I was working after work and going on the weekends and stuff like that. And started
Yeah.
traveling, getting better. Started traveling the world surfing. And I moved to Texas. I'm like, okay, it's problematic now. I can't go off to work. So how do I find a way to bake in surf vacations every 6 months somehow? So I have something to
Right.
look forward to. And I thought, well, I wonder if I could figure out a way to monetize it while also helping some people. And that's where the Surfing Sales Summit. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
To be clear, when I said I was successful, I actually stood up for longer than 10 seconds before I biffed it. So that's why I consider that success for me
Yeah.
because I was like, that was a
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
deal. But
Yeah.
definitely not a pro after 4 times, not even close. I appreciate you giving a little bit of backstory and also the personal journey you've been on, which gives me some context because I just respect your openness with that, but also showing that you've been on both sides of adversity, both from professional standpoint and personally, which is where the whole podcast kind of comes in. So what I'd love, and I've read a bunch of your last past posts around enablement specifically, but because you've been a VP of sales, I'd love to hear from you both what you've seen in the past and what you're seeing now. Do you think that there is a gap in between enablement in general, or what people are calling enablement, and then what actually happens in the field with execution? And if so, what is that gap?
Loaded question. First of all, everybody's definition of enablement is different. So
Yes.
I got to go all the way back to the start and figure out what do we consider to be enablement?
Yeah.
Does that mean a tool? Does that mean coaching? Does that mean support in some way? Does that mean resources? I don't know. I don't know that there's even a perfect answer. That's already complex. Then I think, okay, what I see most often is enablement in the form of tooling and additional things that are supposed to help people do their job better.
Right.
And I think the gap is that leadership is expecting these tools to do all the enabling for them. So they don't have to do this little thing called coaching, which is actually what their freaking job is. And so that to me is the biggest problem is you load people up with a bunch of tools and you think, oh no, they should be able to succeed. I don't have to spend time with them. I don't have to do a
Right.
ride along. I don't have to do role plays. I don't have to do copywriting with them. I don't have to do back and forth like objection and rebuttal kind of handling. I don't have to work with them
Right.
on their demo. I certainly don't have to dig into their life a little bit and try to help them make better decisions, be a better person somehow, work with
Yep.
their mindset and psychology. I don't need to worry about all that stuff because we have a self-paced course for new hires that they can put
Right.
themselves through. That should solve all that. And we
Right.
bought this cool new tool called GTM Buddy, and that solves all the problems. And I'm poking fun at the tools. They're
Yeah.
helpful, but come on. Enablement to me still needs a personal touch. It's a part of coaching and creating a culture of developing the talent around you. That's to me what it means.
It's funny you bring up the whole question on what is enablement because every person I talk to literally says something different because sometimes it's tools, sometimes it's coaching, sometimes it's training, sometimes it's content. And even GTM Buddy would tell you that GTM Buddy alone is not enablement. It's just a tool for enablement. So with teams you worked with, the ones that are most successful, do you have a consistent enablement playbook or execution playbook, whatever you want to call it, that you say, no matter where I go, this is always something that's employed? What would that be for you?
Good question. There's probably a lot of those things, but the first thing that's coming to mind is I expect somebody to do in the first 30 days. And my answer I have found is quite different than a lot of other people. I expect you to learn the industry that you're in. Let's say you and I just get hired and we're in the real estate industry all of a sudden, but we don't come from the real estate industry. You gotta, how much does an agent earn when they sell a house? How much do they earn if they represent a buyer? Right? What's a
Right.
broker? What's a CRE versus a residential real estate agent? What's the name of the largest sales convention in real estate? What are these terms, these acronyms? This is all industry information. I need to educate myself on the industry. So I got to teach people that stuff. That's really
Right.
like school. That's like book work, testing. Right? I'll literally quiz people. Here's 20 things about this industry that we're in. You don't get
Yeah.
90% or higher. I'm not advancing you in
Right.
training or onboarding or whatever. You going back to the drawing board, you better learn this stuff again. Once somebody knows the industry, now we got to learn the product. You got to know you don't need to know every single little thing, but you got to know it well enough. If you're selling, you got to know it well enough to on demand. But Jonathan says, hey, show me how you do this. I'm like, yeah, no problem. Boom. I can show you. What about this thing? Can you do that? Boom. Yes, this is how you do that. You don't want to be stuck saying, that's a good question. I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. Or hold on 1 second. Let me put you on hold. Let me see if somebody can help me. You don't know where all these things are. You don't know how to talk about the product, what pains you solve, how you do it, why you're better than other people. You're not ready to be on the phone. Put people through a test there, demonstrate mastery of the actual product. But once you do those two things, now we got to learn the process. Right? Everybody's sales process and methodology is different. What do these different stages mean? Is this like a med pick shop, a Bant shop, whatever the hell they? How do you actually
Whatever
close a
shop.
deal? How do we actually close a deal? What is the process of sending a contract over and getting signature and all that kind of? How do we market? What does lead routing look like? What's my territory? All of these different things are just like process oriented, operational rigor type things. People need
Yeah.
to be able to know how to do that stuff. Where do I get leads? All these kind of things. Then they know that stuff. And now we're talking about like the messaging, which is like, what am I supposed to say when I outbound to somebody or I get an inbound on the phone? What the hell am I supposed to say to John? What do we do? What does GTM
Right.
do? What's the elevator pitch? What's the cold call pitch? What do we say on demos? How do we overcome particular objections? How do we talk about us compared to competitors in the industry? Copywriting. What do our sequences look like? What do our prospecting emails look like? What do we do? But what do we want people to be saying on LinkedIn? Things like that. Those four things to me are standard that everybody needs to ace in their first 30 days. And if you don't ace these things, you don't advance past go. You don't collect $200 to me. I'm not putting somebody on the phone talking to live prospects and risking brand reputation unless somebody has nailed those four things. That's something that I stand behind and implement every single time.
So I'm going to guess if I ask you what most people do, it'd probably be similar to my experience of what a lot of founders or other CEOs say is that you got to cut that, what you just talked about, down to 2 weeks
Yep.
or do whatever you're doing faster. What do you, because those people who say that are usually VPs of sales. When you meet other people and you're saying, hey, there's a method to the madness and this is why you want to not necessarily go slow, but to be thorough, to be prepared, what do you say to them to help shift that mindset?
First of all, I don't agree that those people saying that are VP of sales.
Yeah.
The people actually saying that are the founders who are telling the VP of sales that they have no choice. That's what has to happen.
Right.
So then the VP of sales has to go deliver that message to the reps. And one could argue that the founders are not even the problem. It's the VCs that they raise money from telling them
Right.
this 90-day ramp you're talking about is too long, Scott. This is ridiculous. So it's a rolls downhill situation.
Right.
So what do I tell them? I tell them, yeah, sure. We can cram all of these things I just talked about into one day each and you can turn people loose. But how is that historically working out for people?
Right.
What are some? 81% of people are going to miss quota this year, something like that. You think somebody's odds of missing quota are better or worse if we take some time to actually educate people and teach them this stuff?
Yep.
You think my rep retention is higher doing it my way than doing it this other way that we're talking about?
I would think
Yeah,
so.
it damn well better be, right?
Yeah, better be.
And it is. So the irony is you slow down in the very beginning and the ramp towards performance and attainment is actually faster than if you try to speed up the initial learning and throw people out there thinking I'll get production faster. It actually doesn't work that way. It backfires
Yep.
damn near every single time. So it's counterintuitive. You got to slow down in order to speed up. And why don't
Right.
people do it? Because most people are not educators and teachers and coaches who understand development and care about development. They're just people who were pretty good at sales, who are a little bit charismatic and inspirational and motivational, and they know a little bit of process and they schmooze their way to the top. And now all of a sudden they're in charge of a dozen people.
Yep.
That's why. And they didn't get any training or coaching or development themselves to know that's not the right way to do it. So the cycle perpetuates itself. Right?
Yeah. I've seen that same thing happen back in the day when things were going crazy. You had a lot of product market fit. You had a lot of money coming through. And so these type of people got up to leadership. And they try to duplicate that playbook based on things they don't know because they had a really good, fortunate, either good marketing team, good
Right.
product market fit or something. And they're successful off a playbook. You're like, that doesn't work. But they think it does because you had success. I always
Yeah.
find that interesting. Where do you think the balance is then? Because I know you advise for like Reggie and Win and a bunch of other really cool tech. Where do you feel like the balance is between, like you talked before, that personal touch with coaching and then also then using a tool like that to help them in their flow and get things done without taking away personal touch?
I think the tech is like an Iron Man suit, used appropriately. It cannot, as of yet, I don't believe it can replace everything and the sort of human touch of things. Our job is to run the last mile. My friend John Barrows has coined the phrase, and use the tools to help us get there. So I'm trying to create a piece of content. I'm a little bit stuck. I have an idea. Okay, a tool like Reggie that you mentioned can generate something for me. And then I better not just hit publish. I better run the last mile and make a little edits and tweaks and stuff like that. Right.
Right.
A tool like Win could cut out a lot of CRM work. Does it mean I need to not use the CRM at all? No, I still need to track stuff, but it just saved me some time. So it's this marriage right now. I think we're in this season of marriage of what we've historically done and applying the tech suit on top of it. And the mistakes people make is they don't use any of the tech at all, or they're
Right.
trying to leave the old way completely behind and do nothing but use this new tech. And that doesn't work yet either. Right now, the marriage of the two things, it is the sort of season that I think that we're in where people are getting the most advantage and winning the most.
Kind of like the whole AI SDR versus the SDR AI powered conversation, right? The
Yeah.
one that's
Exactly.
using the tools versus replace. Yeah.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean it's going to be that way forever. I'm actually in the dystopian camp of at some point in the relatively near future, that AI tech will understand emotion, sentiment, intentionality, mood.
Mhm.
They'll be able to ad lib, make jokes. It'll sound just like me. Right. And I actually think it will come grab a lot of our jobs. Not yet, but I think that's the direction that we're headed. I'm telling you, you got to run the last mile for high generated emails and stuff like that. Not for very long. I think pretty soon the content of those emails will be like, damn, I don't even have to touch a thing. The power of
Smart.
these tools and the power of AI, if you listen to Sam Altman talk about it's exponentially doubling at a faster and faster rate. When he first came
Right.
out, he was like every 12 months, it's doubling how powerful it is. The last time I read about this, it said every 6 months, the power of all these AI tools is doubling. What that
Right.
means is in about 6, 7 years or so, the AI functionality and power will be 256 times more powerful than it is right now. You mean to
Right.
tell me you take a tool like Win or Reggie or OpenAI or whatever and you make it 256 times more powerful, you think an SDR role is still going to be necessary? You think an accounting role will be necessary? I'd pick on accounting because my dad has been in the accounting field for 40 plus years. He's an accounting professor. He tells me, you won't need finance people. All of that should be done like that. It'll start at the lower end kind of roles and it'll chip away. And I think if you're not looking ahead, being a little bit nervous and worried and planning of what are you going to do when that moment comes, I think you're an ostrich with your head in the sand right now.
Yeah.
But we're not there yet. So right now you got to take advantage of the tools that you've got, use some of the strategies that have been working, pay attention to the new things that are coming, deploy those strategies. Those are the people that are winning the moment right now.
Yeah, I've always said that until AI buys from AI, which who knows when that happens, but until that happens and humans aren't buying anymore, you'll still need to have a human with human because humans require
For
connection.
now.
However, for now, what I think is interesting though is like when you see the market in general and how you used to have like the SDR call, then discovery, then demo, then all the sales process, like that's getting scrapped. So you have like demo days and different platforms with demos. And so people are trying to work around the normal sales process. You can see a lot of that being replaced by AI so that by the time a buyer gets to the salesperson, it's really more of a negotiation or whatever topic it is later in the sales stages. Would you agree something like that's shifting with the market?
Yeah. The rigidity is dying off,
Yeah.
must do this. Then the sales
Okay.
cycle is not linear. Arguably it never was. And we just forced it to be linear. It is
Yeah.
definitely not linear right now. Not at all. And so if you're trying to force people through this little funnel and this process of yours, it
Right.
doesn't work. I've had this conversation twice in the last 2 days where a client of mine has come to me and said, "Hey, somebody asked for pricing over email and I don't want to give it to them. What do you think I should do?" And I'm like, "Well, you should give them the price." And they looked at me like, "Well, what? Why would I do that? They're just going to run away because they're going to get sticker
Right.
shock." And I said, "Okay, then you got rid of somebody who wasn't in your ICP. You just saved yourself some time.
Right.
Name the price. Somebody wants something. Buyers have more access to information than they've ever had before. They have more alternatives to you than they've ever had before. So if I don't give somebody the price who's asked me for the price, what do you think they're going to do? How do you think they're going to feel and think? They're going to recoil. They're going to be like, dude, I have all these other people I can go with. They told me the price. What is this guy afraid of?" They know your games. They'll be like, they'll listen to you and you'll be like, "Scott, I'm happy to give you the price, but I really don't know the whole scope of what you need." And people have heard all that before, bro. They've
Yeah.
heard it all before a million times. It doesn't work no more. So I told him, give them the price. Shut up. Just say this is what it is. Let's see what happens. That was Monday. For one of the guys was Monday. Guy texted me at 6:30 last night. He says, "I really hate to tell you this, but you were right." I said, "What do you mean? What happened?" And he goes, "I really wanted you to be wrong so I could yell at you or whatever, but I gave the guy the price. He wrote me back and said, thanks." And then 2 days go by or whatever. They had another call, deal closed. Boom, done.
There
You
you go.
have to give people what they want right now rather than put them through your linear process. There's too many ways for them to go, too many other places for them to go, too many other routes to go.
Yeah.
You're not paying attention to how buyers want to buy, you're going to lose right now.
Would you say that's like part of the challenge? Because you did this for a while. So when you say the old ways, like what you're talking about, like going to what is the buyer expecting? What is their experience like versus forcing them? I feel like there's sometimes where it comes to enablement that people are trying to enable a process or a thing that's not actually going to work because of whatever reason. Like, how do you, like, when you're a leader, how do you become so, I don't know if the word is flexible, but open minded to say, this isn't working. We got to shift and be willing to, because I feel like sometimes we get stuck in the process or the med pick or whatever thing it might be. This is how we have to do it versus saying, is this working? You know what I mean? So,
Yeah,
what do you think?
I don't know. I don't know how to answer that perfectly other than if you're in a sales leadership role, your job is to evaluate the success levels of all of these different things all the time. It's not like a once a year activity where we let's look at our conversion rate. It's December as we prepare for 2025. Let's look at our conversion rate. It's no, you should be obsessing over that all day long. And I think too many people set it and forget it a little bit. They definitely cling to the past and what used to work because something new means they have to learn.
Right.
How many leaders don't want to learn anymore? They get this feeling like they got to the top of the ladder and they're like, "Oof, cool. Oh, it's hard. I don't want to do that anymore." And this new thing, this new motion creates anxiety for people. It creates stress for people. It creates fear of becoming irrelevant, fear of being replaceable, right? I talk about this stuff in terms of the dystopian views I have on AI. I've been really
Right.
outspoken about the fact that I wouldn't say cold calling and cold emailing is dead, but I would 100% say it's dying and it's on life support. We don't answer the phone as much as we used to. We don't reply to emails as much as we used to. These are facts.
Right.
Data
Right.
backs it, right? And I get yelled at big time. I get people coming out of me from every corner of LinkedIn. You're an idiot. You have an agenda. I'm like, my agenda? This literally makes my job harder. Everything
Right.
I'm saying makes my job harder and threatens my relevance. I have to evolve. People come out with the claws out and with vitriol because they're scared. When people are scared and feel threatened, they get angry about these kind of things. They don't want anything to do with it. So
Right.
why aren't they adapting? Part of it is fear. Part of it is laziness. They don't want to learn something new. Part of it is ego. They don't want to admit this person here on my team figured something out that might be better than what we're doing right now. I'm the type of person is I do not
Yeah.
care how we win. I just want to win. I just
Yeah.
want to win. I don't care if I score all the goals. I'm a big soccer guy. I don't care if I score all the goals. I just want to win. I just want to do my part. So, but I had a process on my team. This is how we do things. This is how we pitch. This is the ratio that I want in terms of pipeline to target, all this kind of stuff. When somebody would come to me and say, "Hey, Scott, what do you think about this idea that I had?" I'd be like, "Let's give it a test. You test it. Try it. Go ahead. I'm not testing it with everybody else. You try
Right.
it. You try it in your little queue. You put your own numbers at risk. If it works, let's expand it. Right? If it doesn't work, okay, get back on track. Get back to the basics."
Right.
I'm not egocentric enough to think that my way at present is the only way that works. So when something would work for people on my team, I would fold it into the mix and slowly roll it out to everybody else because I would see it as an improvement.
Mm.
So I don't know like the short soundbite answer to your question,
Yeah.
but that's where it comes from me. It's like I just want to win, man. I don't care how we get
Yeah.
there.
I had this same conversation with an SCR on a team I was consulting. Same thing. 'Cause he's like, "Can we do this message?" I'm like, "I don't know. Let's try it." Go try it. I'm not the expert here. I try to do my best, but I love that thought around the iterative process because I don't think people give enough ability for that to happen in a safe place, like not the entire team, like you said, but getting the chance to do that and then be flexible enough to shift, I think is pretty important. But before we move forward, one quick thing I want to harp on before we get to the very last third of the podcast, which is the Surf and Sales Summit. You were so kind to offer a 10% discount if someone mentions this
Yeah.
podcast about it. So if you go to surfandsales.com, tell me about it. I want to make sure you talk about that real fast.
Yeah. The idea that I had in 2017 was that small events and micro conferences and events were going to replace big, huge, bloated things. And
Right.
as traditional stuff like cold calling and cold emailing was being commoditized, this is 2017 is the era of the spam cannon, right? It's cool. There's 5 calls being made at once. And I'm just sitting here waiting for somebody to answer the phone because calling one at a time is like not good enough in the sake of efficiency. I'm like, this
Right.
is going to die off at some point. And what will matter is intimate, personal experiences and conversations and networking. Not everybody wants to go to an event with 50,000 people there and be
Yeah.
pitched all day long and have their badge scanned in order to get a glass of lemonade on the cutting room floor. They don't want to do that. What sounds more interesting is what if I can go someplace cool? I go to Costa Rica, I go to the beach, and I can get a half day of like content training on sales, leadership, entrepreneurship, whatever. And then the other half of the day, I can do something fun. I can take surf lessons. So I can go zip lining. We can have good food, some drinks if that's your thing. Go for walks on the beach, just
Yeah.
network and hang out. And you spend a week with like minded people You go home with 19 new friends and connections, not
Yeah.
100 badge scans that you do nothing with. And what's happened is a lot of people send their top performers because rather than sending somebody to like President's Club and it's cool, go have 3 days in Cancun and get bombed and come back with a headache. It's okay. Why don't I send you this thing that's part vacation, part educational, and you actually come back refreshed with lots of ideas and a bigger network to help you move forward in your career and your life. That sounds more appealing. And that was the idea. And so I think we've had about 14 of these events since 2017. We usually do 2 or 3 a year. Sold out every single one so far. I've had some great sponsors along the way. Spawned a podcast. Podcast does 100,000 downloads. We've done 450-ish episodes, something like that in the last
Nice.
4 or 5 years. So this kind of fun, silly little idea to create the antithesis of SaaStr has been great. And it turned into a fun little $500,000 business. Who knew?
That's awesome. And you get to go surf with you. What the
Yeah,
heck? Even if you don't know.
exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the
That's
way,
really-
90% of people who come have never surfed before at all.
That's
And
awesome.
so I hire local surf instructors to come help us. And the place we hold it in Playa Grande, Costa Rica is like very forgiving, very beginner wave, no
Yeah.
reef, no rocks, no strong current. It's a good place to learn.
That's awesome. I love it. So surfandsales.com, 10% off. Very generous of you to do that. And you said the dates this year are November 15th through 19th, and then the 20th through the 24th.
Yeah. 2 different sessions back to back.
Cool.
And
Love
then
it,
if
man.
you want to do, and the pro move, by the way, you invite your family to come for the week of Thanksgiving and you extend your vacation a little bit, right?
There you
And
go.
then-
Well timed.
And then everybody's happy.
There you go.
That's the pro move. Yeah.
I think I could talk to my wife about that. I could make something work here. I like it. This is good.
There you go, Jonathan. That's the pro
There
move.
you go. That's a pro move. Well, one last question I'll end with this, but you just posted about this because I was thinking actually the same thing, the Salesforce report that came out about how teams are coming out with enablement, which is fascinating because I've done 3 different surveys this year around enablement that's not vendor based. And the information I'm getting is definitely opposite. So I'm
Really?
curious your thoughts. Yeah. Curious your
Yeah.
thoughts on what you're doing. Cause like from the enablement community, there's been a lot of layoffs and cutbacks and shrinkage and
Yeah.
all this other
Yeah.
stuff. And
Yeah.
so it's encouraging to see Salesforce saying they want to do more enablement, but I want to hear more of your thoughts around it.
My initial thought was surprised because I
Yep.
think I'm probably surrounded more by people in your camp and would get the feedback that you got. So it makes me think about where we got the data.
Yep.
My network is more like seed stage to series C and D, not in the like big, huge enterprise. So are we asking all of those people or are we asking startup kind of folks? I
Yep.
bet the answers might be a lot different. And then it comes back again to what's the definition of enablement? Some of these people that we're talking to, they might see enablement as an investment in more and more of these tools, AI tools to create more efficiency, which by the way, replaces humans and roles so they can do more with less, right?
Right.
Some of these people have laid off thousands of people despite reporting record profits. Like, what are we doing here? You lay off 3,000 people to show more margin. So you raise your stock price a nickel. So the billionaires became multi-billionaires. And then you say, we're really focused on enablement. You're calling enablement what? So it's difficult for me to just answer these soundbite kind of things because they're very nuanced all over the place. I'm in your camp. But in the world that I'm in all the time, it's like, you went through 2020 and the pandemic, and now people work remote. And it's like, how do we enable these people working remote to be successful? We do this thing, we care more about onboarding. We got this tool to support. We're doing as much coaching as we can. A year and a half ago, the market changes, capital dries up. And now everybody's, we need to cut back. We need to save money. Where do we cut back? So you see things like enablement getting cut, things like DEI getting cut. So it was very interesting for me to see some of the results from the Salesforce survey. It was only 5,500 people, right? Let's do it. Let's do it with 5.5 million and see what happens.
See where it goes. Yeah. That's exactly what I thought too. I was like, I wonder who they talked to because that's not what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
So,
Doesn't
That's
mean their
super
data's
interesting.
wrong. It's just, I've said for a long time, like data may be king, but it's not a god. You
That's
can
right.
manipulate data to tell whatever story you want.
Yep. Let me end with a hopefully more positive note than this, which is in the ideal world. I know everyone defines enablement differently. I know you defined it earlier, but what would you like to see enablement functions actually be in an ideal org? With you, if you're the leader and you have your number two guy being enablement, what would they be doing?
The simplest definition I come up with would be a Swiss Army knife to eliminate inhibitors and blockers amongst all the people on my team. There's a blocker around onboarding and learning new information. There's a blocker of continuing education. There's a blocker of inefficient waste of time on the team. There's a blocker of how do I even learn how to use all these tools that we have? Do we need them all? It's like, okay, let's say we need them all. I only know how to use one of them, teach people all this stuff. There's a blocker in terms of business acumen. One of the things that has fallen off in the last few years, at least in the opinion of old dinosaurs like me and you, maybe, but it's just general business acumen. Like when all these tools do all these things for you, you don't need to know how business works until everything is robotic and AI and a human wants to talk to a human who understands business acumen and you can't have that dialogue. So we might want to get back to enabling people to be able to have that kind of dialogue. There's certainly blockers around data integrity, knowing who to reach out to, why, and at what time, and for what reason. So it's all to me around education and development. That's what I think of. When I just hear the word enablement, I think of that's development, that's education, that's help, that's assistance, that's guidance, that's coaching, that's mentorship. It's all
Yeah.
of these kinds of things. And that's what I would want that person to be helping me with. My co-pilot or my right-hand man, I think you call it.
Yeah. Yeah. I looked up once, I didn't do this, but I looked up just Google that good enablement definition. It says the action of giving someone the means to do something. I'm like, there you go. It's just performance improvement, being able to, like you said, half my job in any enablement role I've ever had is getting crap out of the way versus putting more
Yes.
stuff in, which is
Yes.
funny. But
Yeah. It's about removing blockers,
um,
inhibitors in people's way. I used to walk my sales floor and say, John, what can I do for you today, dude? What can I get out of your way that is
yeah,
preventing you from closing more deals today? Right. I used to do stupid stuff like I would even be a butler for everybody and say, you need coffee? You need a snack? I'll go do that. I'll be that guy. That'll save you time. Because I know what people do when they go get coffee and go get a snack. It turns into a 15, 20-minute break.
yep,
I would think about these kind of silly things. If that's all you need today, fine. That's what I'll do. That's my job.
I'll
My
get you a
job is
coffee.
to help. My job is to help you get where you want to go. Period. If I do that, I've done my job. And if I do that enough at scale, the company gets the outcome that they're after as well.
I love it. I think that is the note I want to end on right there. So Scott,
There
thank you
we
so
go.
much. Surfandsales.com again for 10% to mention this podcast. Very giving if you do that. Just want to say thank you for you do the community, like from a person on way out here in Utah, basking in the glory and greatness of Scott. I just want to tell you thank you. So
Appreciate that. Thanks, John.
yeah,
Appreciate it.
cool. Thanks, man.
Thank you for tuning in to The Gap by GTM Buddy. For the latest AI tech in helping your teams execute with just-in-time enablement that converts and creates revenue, go to gtmbuddy.ai.